Hello and welcome to another episode of The New Frontier. Today I am joined by Tim, who was bopping his head along to the opening music, seemed to be enjoying it. So it's nice for us to have that on the podcast. So Tim is the founder of the digital marketing agency Exposure Ninja. The Exposure Ninja team first of all put out incredible content. That's how I first came across him. So we'll link that, check it out. But secondly, have been pioneers in the new frontier of generative engine optimization. They were the first company to share ranking methods and case studies for Google AI overviews, and they followed that up with a lot of interesting stuff on ChatGPT as well. Tim also owns Shinobi Capital Group, a renewables company of solar heat pump installation across the UK. So Tim, welcome.
Thanks, Max. Enjoying my experience here so far. I love the syncopated hi-hats and the intro music. Very excited to be here.
How's your day been so far?
It's not been too bad. We had a very interesting meeting all about systems in the renewables business. So I am ready to talk some AI.
So you split your time both in renewables and in AI. You founded. Maybe as a bit of background, you wrote a book, right, and kind of built one of the biggest, a very large agency in the UK. Do you want to give a bit more background to yourself? And
yeah, one of the coolest, maybe not one of the biggest. So I was an ex-professional drummer. I built a website for my next door neighbor that did really well. So I wrote a book about the method I used to get at the top of Google. That was in 2010, maybe 2011, and that book did quite well. So I ended up generating a lot of leads and built Exposure Ninja, which is a digital marketing agency specializing in search. And that's been going well. Last couple of years, I handed over to a CEO and a senior leadership team. So I'm now building a group of companies at Shinobi Capital. So investing in insulation, heat pumps and solar companies. So completely outside of digital marketing, although of course they all use Exposure Ninja services. And I keep a keen eye on AI, not least generative AI and how it relates to search, because my first love is SEO, and I'm still involved in Exposure Ninja. And so I'm spending my time between lots of different things at the moment, finding it really, really interesting. I'm the sort of person that needs lots of different plates spinning to keep fully engaged. So loving every second.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're super busy. So kind of jumping into the meat of this topic, and I think people are going to love this episode. But to start with, how would you define GEO and why should people care about it?
Yeah, why should people care? So generative engine optimization, I think it's a somewhat inelegant term because it sort of takes the SEO, the search engine optimization that we're also familiar with, and sort of translates it to generative AI tools like ChatGPT. So I think it's an inelegant term, but it seems to be the one that people are going for. Why should people care about it? Well, since ChatGPT came out in whenever it was, November 2022, those of us who are listening to this podcast will probably be on the sort of the early adopters, will be at the start of the bell curve. And we will know that our own search behavior probably changed quite significantly, particularly for informational type queries. We'll be using tools like ChatGPT and Perplexity a lot more. And I think quite early on, there was a recognition that, wait, it might not happen in 2022. It probably won't happen in 2023. It might not even happen in 2024, although it is starting. But eventually there is going to be a shift where the general population is using generative AI tools to find the answers to their questions a lot more than they have been. And it's likely that that behavior is going to take from traditional search. So we've always taken the opinion at Exposure Ninja that our job is to make our clients as much money as possible through digital marketing. So we saw this as, okay, this is something we need to get really good at because we need to help our clients get found when somebody's searching on ChatGPT, when somebody's searching in Claude, when someone is searching in Perplexity. So that is why we sort of went full in. And then, of course, Google had its own thing going on with the AI overviews, what used to be called SGE or Search Generative Experience. And we saw that as, again, quite potentially transformational. And Google was very bullish about this being the future of their search engine. So from our perspective in the SEO world, this is something that businesses and marketers just cannot ignore. This is so clearly the future that it feels like it's like the next generation of search. So yeah, I mean, we've all seen businesses that have been transformed with great ranking on Google, and we're expecting to see, the next generation of businesses grow significantly through prominent visibility in these Gen AI tools.
Yeah, well, as you say, you're on this podcast, you're definitely preaching to the choir. But it's funny you said it was an inelegant term, because we used to call it answer engine optimization, and I actually think GEO is super elegant because it's a nod towards the future of SEO, and it kind of, I don't know, like, to me it's a nice term that I'm seeing more and more, and like I saw, I often put in this kind of stuff, and that's how I came across you. Like, I literally put in GEO and found you on Spotify. So I'm seeing it become kind of get adopted more and more. And I saw an amazing stat from the A16Z podcast that 60% of US adults now have used a chatbot in the last 30 days to research a product. So it's definitely, as you say, becoming, now in 2025, we're getting to that point where we're getting to like the mass adoption. Yeah. So how are you seeing these AI tools change search behavior?
Well, I mean, I think that the stats are really worth spending some time on. Sorry, someone's trying to phone me. The stats are really worth spending some time on, because that will be, I think, the first indication that mass adoption is sort of happening. So OpenAI, I think in August 2024, ChatGPT had 200 million weekly active users. By December, it was up to 300 million. So that's a 50% growth in 5 months. And if that trajectory continues, that's pretty astounding. I think in December also, they said they had 1 billion queries per day on chat, or 1 billion messages per day. So not really searches. So you look at Google at 8.5 billion a day, and you see that gap sort of narrowing, right? And that's quite a significant narrowing, given that, if we go back a couple of years, or maybe, just the day before ChatGPT was released, if you just said there will be a legitimate competitor to Google, I mean, we wouldn't have known where it was going to come from. So many businesses have tried. Bing has been taking shots at Google for 10 years, and Bing's still dead on the floor, right? And then there was an Ofcom report. So Ofcom is the media and communications regulator in the UK, and every year they do this sort of industry study, and they showed that actually Google users in the UK, or Google usage amongst adults, had dropped between May 23 and May 24 for the first year ever.
Wow.
It was a 4% user drop, which is fairly significant. Now, I think Google still, May 2024, still had around 84% of UK adults using it regularly. But still, that shows that users are dropping on Google. And the top 3 search engines, Google, Yahoo, and Bing, had all seen drops. I think Bing dropped around 16%. So there's significant statistical evidence that search usage is dropping. And it's not because we've all found all the answers to our questions, obviously, but it's because ChatGPT's 300 weekly active users have got to come from somewhere. So yeah, I think it's that. And then any of us early adopter crew, the cool guys, who've used these tools, know that one search on Perplexity can sometimes replace multiple searches on Google. One of the most profound moments for me was I was evaluating a business that was for sale. It had gone into administration. It had an asset list of all of these vehicles and all this machinery, all this equipment. And I needed to value it. Now, previously, to value a list of 25, 30 vehicles and machines and all of this stuff, and to work out how much they would have depreciated over the years, to find out how much they were worth, you would have had to sit there for hours researching this. I just copied and pasted the whole thing in Perplexity, and it worked out the whole thing in like 20 seconds. I thought, that's probably 50, 100 searches on Google just taken away by one. So I think, how do we work out what this means for a business? Well, it means that we're probably going to see a drop in organic traffic, because that number of searches won't be happening and the answers are coming from the AI engine rather than from our websites. But it also is an opportunity, because it means that we can be found in these AI searches. We can be the sources cited. These AI tools will often recommend a business, or they'll mention a business. And we see this as a real land grab for companies that are able to adapt their content and optimize for these tools to start getting featured, getting recommended by these tools. So I think that's the play for the next couple of years. That's where we're focusing our energy.
Yeah, I mean, those are some astounding statistics. So just to repeat them, 1 billion messages a day in ChatGPT now.
Yeah, December 2024.
And Google gets 8 billion.
Yeah, 8.5 billion, I think, is the most.
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, that is astounding, as you say, to kind of, I mean, obviously, yeah, it's still 8.5 times less, but the kind of direction of travel is really clear. And on the and they also saw, you said, the top 3 search engines, traditional search engines, saw a drop in users in the first time in the UK.
Yes.
Which again, I didn't know that, which is incredible and showing that actually traffic's being taken away here. So, like, from your perspective, where do you see this going, and how quickly? Just if you had to speculate.
I mean, it's a really good question, and I think it's really tempting if you're in our world to say, my gosh, ChatGPT is going to increase its user base by 50% every 5 months. That's going to continue by, whatever it is, December 2026, the whole world is going to be using ChatGPT and Google's going to be dead. I think it's easy for us to over-index on the disruption because we have already been disrupted. Our behaviors have already been disrupted. Yeah. If you go out there into the outside world, I think about my wife or my family or people like that, and on a daily basis, where are they going? They're going to Google because that's how they learn to use the internet. And I think that type of user habit is more sticky than many of us sort of appreciate if we're in the start of the bell curve, really. So I don't know how long these things are going to take. I think one of the keys will be how Apple and Google integrate these Gen AI tools into their on-device search. If Siri suddenly becomes actually good, and their attempts to integrate ChatGPT, I think at the moment are, I don't know. I think we're all hoping for a bit more. So I think that's one of the things. Can companies like Google sort of force adoption through getting to us first? That'll be an interesting thing. I think the other wild card there is Google's AI overviews. And if Google adapts its AI overviews to be as useful as ChatGPT can be, then I think there is a real potential there for that to sort of suppress some of ChatGPT's adoption. That doesn't seem to be where it's going. It seems to be much more conservative, which you might expect because they obviously have the innovator's dilemma and they have a huge amount of money to lose. But yeah, I find it really difficult to predict when this is going to happen. I think what is going to happen and what we're already seeing from clients is they're saying our top referral traffic source has suddenly become ChatGPT, or it's become Perplexity. And they're starting to then follow the money to say, okay, so how are people finding us on these tools? What's going on? How can we shape the narrative? What do these tools understand about our business? So I think it's going to feel frustratingly slow to some of us, but clearly this is the direction of travel, like you recommend, like you said earlier.
Lots of interesting points in that. I think, one of the things, as I imagine you appreciate, and which asserts Google's dominance, is they have all of these deals, right, with Apple and all of these platform providers to be the default search engine. And most people are lazy and they're not going to switch to another one. Yes, as you say, like the early adopters, like, downloaded Perplexity. I'm a subscriber on Perplexity Pro. I love it. I also got ChatGPT Pro. But for most people, they're not going to switch apps until they have to. But Google did just have a case that they lost, which in the US on antitrust, meaning that they can't be the default anymore. Now, who knows what happens there? Because obviously, new administration, I've no idea what this means, and we've already seen them, Trump kind of turn TikTok around and delay TikTok. So who knows what will happen? But if that antitrust suit holds and they aren't allowed to be the default anymore, because that is monopolistic behavior, then that's going to be a real killer. But my meta view is, I don't think we're going to have Google die, but I think we will see a shift from traditional search to conversational search. So, search in my prediction will become more fragmented. People, the people who love tech and stuff will be on Perplexity. The everyday Joe will be on between Google and ChatGPT because they've heard of them. And there'll be a bunch of other maybe niche ones that crop up in between. Amazon Rufus for product shopping, and maybe some other ones if you're doing some other niche searches. And I think we'll move to a much more fragmented place rather than having like one dominant Google, which is like everything, as we have seen in the last 10 years. But having said that stuff, kind of focusing on ChatGPT, because I think, as you say, and we've certainly seen this in the content, more and more people coming from ChatGPT to our site, and I know you guys find that as well for Expose Ninja. So how does the ChatGPT search function work?
So the ChatGPT and all of these Gen AI tools broadly have the same sort of process. There's really two flavors of search. There's like an offline search like you get with Claude, which doesn't go onto the web and it doesn't do a background search. It just serves you answers from its knowledge. And then there's sort of the web-based search, where typically what these tools would do, and Perplexity is no different, is they would take your query, they might chunk it up into sections, run some background web searches, and then basically take content from the websites that they find and present it. And usually they're using, well, there's really three main search indexes that they can use in the background: Google, Bing, and Brave. So Google's definitely not going to die, because it is, by anybody's assessment, the best web search engine in the world. From that antitrust ruling, we found out that Microsoft had tried to get exclusivity with Apple, and Apple concluded that Microsoft could actually give Apple all of Bing, and it still wouldn't be worth the destruction in user satisfaction to use Bing as the primary search engine on Apple devices. So Google is so clearly the winner. Yeah. There is always going to be some business there, because it's a very hard fought and well won game. So yeah, but that's it. Take your query, pass it into maybe some separate queries if needed, run those background searches, and then summarize the information.
Cool. So why might a business rank well in Google but then poorly on AI?
Yeah. So there's a few different reasons. Firstly, it might rank well in the Google search results, but maybe not on the Bing or Brave search results. But I think if we take that, I mean, that seems to be relatively rare. If we just take Google's AI overviews, for example, this is something that we studied a lot when they came out. We noticed that there would often be a website that was ranking really well on Google. Sometimes it would have top position, featured snippet, but it wouldn't be referenced at all in the AI overviews. And this is a worst case scenario for a business, because they've gone from where they might be picking up 30% of the clicks on that page to they're now pushed below the fold behind a complete answer, and they're not featured anywhere. And what we tended to find there was it wasn't anything to do with links. It was basically the formatting of the content and the language that they were using as well. So we love doing this. We did a whole bunch of tests where we take websites that were, in that situation, and we tweak and play with the content to force them into the AI overviews. And at the same time, you can also do things where, let's say you've got a client or a web page that's not ranking in the top 5 positions. You can sometimes leapfrog those results and be the top linked site in AI overviews just by reformatting the content. And it's really simple stuff. So from our experimentation, we found that it was basically, at least in AI overviews case, AI overviews want to cite the full answer to the question. So let's say that you ask a question like, I don't know, how does MagSafe charging work, right? And typically if you're writing an article about how MagSafe charging works, you would start with all of this bullshit preamble. MagSafe charging is a proprietary Apple technology which was invented in and it bases on magnets, which you do all this to try and increase the engagement through the article. And then when people have scrolled past 100 pages of adverts, they'd eventually get to the answer at the bottom. Well, AI overviews doesn't tend to like that type of thing, we've found. What it tends to like is MagSafe charging works by, inductive magnetic charge, or whatever the answer is, right at the top of the page. So really simple summary that agrees with the answer that AI Overviews actually gives. And written in very plain language, simple sentence structures. That tends to be the sort of thing that the AI Overviews likes. With Perplexity and with ChatGPT, with web search, what you tend to find is that, let's say somebody's searching for product recommendations, or they're searching for information about the best brands for something or other. These tools will often be reluctant to surface a brand's own content. So you'll rarely see, let's say you're searching for like best phone cases for iPhone or something like that. You might not see Apple ranking in those answers, and you might not see Apple providing those answers. But what you will see is a whole bunch of articles like, we've ranked the 5 best phone cases for adventure users of iPhones or whatever. And it'll tend to be third-party content that ranks, which they then aggregate. So that's another reason why you might be doing really well in web search, but not in some of these AI searches, because it looks like for particular queries, they're actually ignoring the brand's own voices and instead going to third-party sites that have already done some sort of analysis and recommendations.
Cool. So you said, to summarize, concise answers and third-party content. And I listen, as I said, big fan of your podcast. I think you also in there mentioned something about original data. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, so this is another thing that we've found to be quite useful. And I think there's a couple of angles with this. So these AI tools that they can, if I said, how popular is Google in the UK? Well, these tools would know, right, Google's really popular, and they could write this answer about how Google's got the market share and has been accused of having a monopoly and it's on loads of devices. But how do they actually back up that answer? Well, they need some sort of original data to provide as evidence for their answer, and Perplexity is particularly good at this. So what they tend to do is they tend to surface some original data from one of their web pages. And of course, when they have that data, when they present the data in the answer, they are linking through to the website that provides that data. So one of the things that we recommend to our clients is, if you've got any original data in your business, it can be a really good idea to publish that data on your website, because you never know the types of searches that data is going to be surfaced in. And of course, then it means you're getting those links, you're getting those features at the top of Perplexity or whatever, where someone can click through if they want more information. And I think this is going to become increasingly important as we start to see more people using tools like Gemini with deep research, right? So if anyone hasn't done that, it's you type a query in. Let's say you wanted to look at you wanted to see how energy prices might change if Donald Trump fixes the Russia-Ukraine war, right? So what Gemini Deep Research would do is it take that query, it'd work out the sort of research steps it needs to do, and then it would go and run background searches, and it would analyze maybe 100, 150 different websites for content there. And what it's going to do, again, it's going to pull out like original first-party data to present in its answer, because it needs to give a well-rounded and good answer to that. So, and you might not have written about Russia-Ukraine war. You might have written some completely arbitrary thing, but Google's found a connection to that and it's pulled it through as part of its big research project. So I think as we're starting to move towards people using kind of agentic search and having these tools go and do background research, it's going to be even more important for brands to be publishing their own data on the website, because you just don't know where that data is going to come up and where it's going to get you a click or branded mention or product mention.
Yeah, I think when I heard you say this, I thought it's such a good point, because if you look at ChatGPT and you look at Perplexity and Gemini Research, all of these AI engines, they answer the question. And if you're just saying generic stuff, like maybe using that magnet charger, like if it's a generic answer, they may not quote that. But if you have, as you say, they do want to provide references to the data. So like drilling down a bit, like how should brands like present data? Have you seen any good ways of kind of building these kind of reports? Like what would it look like?
It's obviously going to depend on the data that they've got, and it could be as simple as, so for our insulation business, for example, so we do insulation for people's homes, and one of the things that we're working on is how can we get data about exactly how much money people are saving if they have their houses insulated and publish that on the website. Because then if somebody is searching for how do I make my house more energy efficient, they might not even be thinking of insulation. But if the research tool goes and finds, let's say it does a search for money saved through energy efficiency, and it finds our blog post and surfaces it. So in that case, it would just simply be a blog post or something titled, how much money can you save on your energy bills from insulation? And then we just present that data in a table. And the tools are pretty good at pulling data out of, it doesn't need to necessarily be structured data or schema or anything like that. The tools are pretty good at just reading through content and pulling these numbers out. Obviously, it's going to depend on, the type of business you are. As I was at a show recently, and I got talking to someone who they make some sort of measurement device for temperatures in a heat pump, and they're producing vast amounts of data, and that's going to take some thinking, because what you don't want to do is just post like a 50 million line unstructured CSV on your website and hope that Google's going to surface you in some answers like that. That's not going to happen. So I think we've got to think about, this is almost just thinking about how do we take our information and make it newsworthy? This is almost like taking a PR approach to it, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things we've done in digital PR for years is, if you've got some data in your business, how do we turn that into a story? And it's a similar approach here. I think it's taking a newsworthy approach to something. Or I've got some information about efficiency of a house. Like, how do I turn that into a news story? How can that, let's say, can you save a cup of coffee every day if you get your house insulated? Well, maybe that's an interesting news story. And, oh, by the way, that's the sort of information I should be publishing on my website.
Yeah. So to summarize Tim's tips for GEO of Google, Gemini, and ChatGPT, concise answers with the kind of the answer near the top of the page. Third-party content, having data that the AI will link. And then you also have talked about PR and kind of getting in the PR specifically of those publications that have licensing agreements with ChatGPT. Do you want to expand a bit on that?
Yeah, and I think the licensing agreements is one thing, but I think just basically being found on any sort of high-profile websites and any websites that are being used as a reference in these answers. So if you do search something like best backpacks for camera lovers or whatever, you'll tend to find that there are articles written either in mainstream publications, the classic example being Forbes, who will have written an article on best backpacks for camera lovers. And the recommendations will often just be lifted from maybe not one of those articles, but the top 3 or the top 4. And then Perplexity will format them into a nice little table, and it'll do a little comparison for you. And in the US, it'll even allow you to go and shop from the search results. So the key in that environment is you need to make sure that your products are getting featured in these articles. And you won't often know which articles are going to be the ones that are cited, and it might change over time. But certainly getting mentioned on the top organic ranking sites in your space is a really, really good idea. And you can do this through standard digital PR, reaching out to these businesses. Some of them will charge you. That's an ethical question that you have to examine for yourselves. But certainly recognizing that if you're going to get recommended, a lot of these tools are going to be using third-party content to provide recommendations. They're not just going to look at your website and go, yeah, you're the best. Absolutely, you can have top spot here. They're going to look to other authorities that have sort of done that analysis first.
Yeah, I mean, I actually had a meeting last week in the Garden offices, and I was saying to them, in this world where information can just be generated in one click and everyone's pouring out so much information, the gatekeepers, I think, become more and more important. So even though everyone's like, oh, legacy media, blah, 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 the reality is, if you're training AI models and you're Microsoft or Google or OpenAI or Anthropic, whoever you are, you need to have the training to be on accurate information. You don't want to feed this stuff just random rubbish, which then corrupts the model. So I think these are going to become more and more important, actually, rather than as a kind of trend is at the moment of thinking like this, legacy media is finished, and maybe in terms of people watching it on TV, yes, but I think in actually providing content to train AI models, like there needs to be some like accuracy and truth in them. Otherwise, we're going to be moving into a very dangerous world.
I agree.
So,
there is a rabbit hole here if you're up for it, but
go on.
There is a potential future that you could see where actually these Forbes articles, their primary target audience isn't humans at all. It is just the AI agents and the Gen AI research bots. And I know the Perplexity CEO has talked about the future of advertising might not be advertising to humans. It might be advertising to the Gen AI bot that's then summarizing information, including from the adverts, to present to the user a recommendation of a product to buy. And I think it'll be really interesting for sites like The Guardian to work out where they add the most value to brands. And ultimately, that's going to be their business model. Their business model is ultimately, how do I add the most value to brands?
Yeah.
And whether it is, ruthlessly AI optimized articles designed to be crawled and used in recommendations to end customers that's passed through an AI tool, or whether it is writing human written content. There's probably, there is going to be a world where both make sense, but it'll be one or the other, I think.
Definitely. I mean, I'm 100% with you on that. Like, I know people who, are friends in like the Forbes under 30 under 30, and I always think, oh, what a waste of time. Like, like what, it's just completely for the ego. But actually, if there's a world where Forbes has a deal with Perplexity and OpenAI, and that's a way that I could get e-content into these, surface on these, AI models, I would 100% pay for it, because as you say, it'd be an investment, not to kind of, post on my LinkedIn and say, oh, look how brilliant I am. I've got this little F, 30 under 30 in my bio, but actually, like, it's for the brand. So I 100% agree with you there. You touched on a last point, which I want to maybe go into a little bit more, which was on AI crawling. So we talked about concise answers, third-party content, linking through data, having data, PR agent, having good PR with established names. But then, the final kind of technical point on being scrapable for these AI models. What would you advise people here?
Well, I don't think you really need to overthink this, because these AI tools are, they're pretty sophisticated. So as a rule of thumb, we tend to implement schema markup and structured data on our client sites, because we want our clients to be visible in search features, whether it's reviews or product snippets or whatever. But generally, the AI tools seem to be pretty good at picking up that stuff, even if it's not in structured data. I think as important as there's a separate point on digital PR, which I don't want to confuse too much here. But straightforward messages that are easy to translate, and that are easy to translate through the AI tool is going to be really important. And again, I think this is something that businesses haven't had to think about, because they've been talking directly to their customer. But if we're moving to a world where businesses aren't talking directly to their customer, the customer's talking to an AI, the AI is then translating the business message. All of us need to think about what are the key messages we want to get through about our products, about our brand, and making sure that is consistently found everywhere. Right, so we've got a client, The Ordinary. They're a skincare brand, and if you search Claude for best value skincare brands, it will recommend The Ordinary, not because it's doing a web search, but because it's ingested all the information on the internet about The Ordinary, and it often links The Ordinary with good value. So when you search for that, you get that answer, and that's really important. That's going to be more important than ever. If you want to sell MagSafe chargers, for example, what is it about MagSafe chargers that make people need to buy them? What are the key messages that you want to communicate? And then making sure those are being found across the internet, in the digital PR, on your own content, in The Guardian. I think that's something that we haven't really had to think about. But in terms of like actually presenting the information on your website, I know there was a GEO paper that said you could do things like insert, quotes from people. Make sure that you're citing your own sources in your articles. They tended to find a correlation between articles that did that and good visibility in geo. But honestly, we just tend to find that, if you've got a relatively easy to read website, these tools are pretty good at picking up the content on them, really.
Fair enough. So I think that is an incredible tour de force across this stuff. So we've kind of had these kind of generic ones. Do you want to comment specifically? Is there any differences between ChatGPT, Google Gemini, or Google Overviews and Perplexity, that you've seen, and specifics for ranking on each of these different models?
Differences between. So
I'll give you. So one thing maybe that you could talk about, and you kind of briefly mentioned at the beginning, but ChatGPT kind of obviously built on Bing, right? So you've got a lot of stuff there you can do about.
Yeah, potentially. So I'm not 100% sure about this, because the conventional wisdom is that ChatGPT is built on Bing, but I think from my understanding, that basically comes from the fact that OpenAI and Microsoft had a deal, and that Microsoft integrated ChatGPT with Bing. But I'm not 100% sure that it always uses Bing. And the reason I think that is because I was listening to an article or listening to an interview with the founder of Brave, who seemed to strongly imply that they powered ChatGPT.
And what is Brave?
It's another search engine, but they also have an API, so you can use their index as well. So Google, Bing, and Brave are the three main sort of search APIs that any of these tools are going to use. I suspect that ChatGPT has its own thing and then uses these different models as and when needed. Same with Perplexity, rather than it being as simple as Perplexity goes straight onto Google and surfaces the answer. I would assume that there's some sort of, like they do with the different LLMs in the background, that they're testing different ones, or they're using different ones for different things. But as for what you need to do differently, honestly, we've found that if you're doing well in, if you're getting your business mentioned in lots of third-party sites, particularly if those are ranking well, and if you've structured your content in the way that we've spoken about, then generally you're pretty good. Sometimes ChatGPT will get hooked on a certain article. So we've noticed for some searches, if you're asking for recommendations, ChatGPT will find one article and it'll basically take all the recommendations from that article and share them, so it's not actually drawing from lots of different sources. And we don't notice that behavior so much with Perplexity, and obviously not with Gemini either. But other than that, I can't really think of too many specific techniques.
Have you seen the ability, any benefits from building custom GPTs? So, for example, one of the big things we help customers with is to rank on Amazon Cosmo. If you're in the Amazon world, you probably heard of Cosmo. It's a new AI algorithm there. We have one of the most popular GPTs, which is literally called Amazon Cosmo, and it's got thousands of usages. If you put in Amazon, we're one of the top ones that come up, and we have plus 4 stars, lots of reviewers. Have you seen that? Putting in a custom GPT on the topic that you want to be recognized for, and you've given them that data, and it plugs 2 and 2 together.
That's interesting. No, we haven't tried that. Obviously, I've heard of people sort of saying that if you feed it with those custom instructions or whatever, it's then going to somehow sort of just absorb your entire GPT into its main algorithm, and any recommendations that you put in there might pull through.
I don't know if it absorbs the GPT, but I just wonder if it understands. You upload your GPT, you upload your website, the LinkedIn. So you give it actually a lot of data about the company inside the GPT, and I just wonder if any of that is being used in informing the GPT about your company when people come and ask about a topic, especially if it's the same topic that the GPT is on. And maybe it gives it more certainty. I mean, look, I don't know. It's a sample of one, but I do know that we get surfaced for this, and that we have one of biggest GPTs in terms of like usage and rankings on this. So could be a coincidence, but who knows?
That's interesting. I think with a lot of this stuff, that even the AI companies don't necessarily always, they certainly don't communicate what they know, but it's certainly sometimes comes across like they don't actually know how some of these things work themselves.
Yeah.
I think things like that are really interesting. The thought experiment I try and play in my head is, if I was in charge of this, what would I do? And then assume that they're much more clever, so they're going to at least do that. And the use case that you mentioned there does, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, really? So, yeah, that's interesting.
Well, it depends how much these models are learning from because they definitely learn from the data that people put into them, and you can ask it not to, but they do. Like, they have an incredible, one of OpenAI's biggest moats is that they have all this human interaction with the model, and they use that to train the model and improve it on what's good and what's bad and the future ones. So, like, I would be surprised if they don't do that for the businesses and the websites that make GPT stores. Like, why wouldn't you, why would you exclude all of that data? I don't know. Anyway, so I just wondered if you'd seen it. Maybe, if you're listening, it's not a bad thing to do anyway, because people find us through the GPT store. So even if you're not going to be training the model, you definitely get discoverability.
Well, absolutely. We built a we built a GPT for the government rules in retrofit. The installation business are really complicated. So we basically trained a model to answer people's questions about the new funding scheme that was coming. And of course, in the training, you set like the system instructions or whatever. And we, of course, we explained what the business does. And we said, casually mention some of our case studies or whatever, and position us whenever it becomes natural. And by doing that, you can go to your market and say, if you want to learn about the new government's new Warm Homes Local Grant Scheme, here's a GPT that explains everything. And they're like, oh, great. Yeah, sounds really. And of course, then it's recommending your business sort of gently and subtly throughout. So I think those GPTs can be amazing. And what an amazing, if your audience knows about GPTs, then they're not going to be so enamored. But for a lot of, ordinary people off the street, they're like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. You're such a great business. You're really helping me or whatever. And you've got the opportunity to sort of subtly sell yourself through those GPTs as well. So I think they are a cool tool. I mean, the other thinking about your suggestion now makes more sense, because part of me also wonders why OpenAI even bothered with these GPTs. So one of the reasons that they will bother with them is because people like you are then going to educate the model more and more, and go off and get the user feedback, which is then going to help the main models improve. So yeah, I think it makes sense.
So I asked the GPT store, I asked ChatGPT if it used it just now, and it says, yes, if you explicitly consent, OpenAI may use your interactions to help improve models. By default, it does not use your interactions, including those from the GPT store. If you opt in, which I think is actually the default, your interactions could be used to refine models. But OpenAI provides controls for users to manage their data preferences. Always check OpenAI's latest privacy policies, blah, blah, blah. So maybe is the answer to that. I have a bit of a case study I want to throw at you, Tim, and we'll probably wrap up shortly after this. But just out of interest, I was having a conversation with one of my angel investors who is at a consultancy firm, big strategy consultancy firm, and they helping with PE. And one of the so he's helping a PE firm acquire a business. It's a services business, and the service business used to have a lot of customers coming to it through SEO. So I don't want to name specifics, but it's a service business, traditional services, and kind of people would type in a question into Google, and then they would take that, Google would quote this website, it would bring people in, and they would sell to them. And he kind of told me that one of the big issues that this company was facing was what we discussed. This is no longer happening. There's AI overviews now, and a lot of these key questions that they're dealing with, people are just looking at it, dropping off, not going to the website. And it's a huge problem for this business, because like organic search was how they're getting their traffic. So if this was like an exposure engine client, and maybe they could be in the future, what would you advise, like, you know, the CEO or what the purchasing company to do to try and reverse this trend of organic disappearing?
It's a really good question. The cop-out answer is, yeah, but that was all informational traffic that was probably crap anyway. So who cares? All you care about is conversions. So none of this matters, and you can just move on with your life. I think that's a really it's a really basic and crude answer. It's actually not right.
Yeah.
Because getting informational visitor onto your website in the first place gives you a chance at converting them with a top of funnel CTA, like a download or something, and now you're not getting that chance. I mean, they're really, I think there's 3 ways to win here. The first way is to get your website being one of the ones that's linked to in the AI overview.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really know what impact this is going to have on traffic. We don't know how much organic traffic is going to be lost from people just staying in the AI overviews. We don't know what the click-through rate of those.
This company, like, it's a real example. They've seen a lot. Like you know, when you're kind of selling a business at this stage, you have to obviously present the risks, and this was like number one risk of the company is that they basically completely dropped their traffic to the website and they quoted this.
So then the follow-up question or the thing to study would be, what's their visibility in the AI overviews? If they have no visibility in the AI overviews, when they have visibility in that section, do they pick that traffic up? Mm-hmm. Then the second opportunity is getting recommended by the AI overview. So sort of doing what we've talked about. We've got a client who I can't name, but I actually had an experience with them where I went from being a top of funnel searcher to actually making a purchase. And this was a really interesting example of how the AI overviews compress the buyer journey. So I needed to check if I could get a particular certification at something. And this was a really informational search. I had no intention of purchasing at all. So I searched on Google for whatever can I get certification in this or this? And it said yes. And then it gave me a bit more info and it said, and one of the providers for this is this company. And they happened to be a client of ours, and we'd actually done that. And now I was a customer, so it was a little bit weird. But I then clicked on that website with the intent to purchase. So I'd done my top of funnel research in the top of the AI overviews. So whereas previously I would have gone onto their blog post to read about this thing, I was now clicking to make a purchase. And it struck me that, wow, I'm now a commercial intent visitor onto this website from an informational search. So it compressed my user journey significantly. And I think that's the other opportunity for them. So even if they see a reduction in total organic traffic, by influencing their AI overviews answer, by getting themselves mentioned in the answer, and by being one of the cited sources, can they get an increase on their conversion rate from that organic traffic because it has higher commercial intent? And I think that's the opportunity, because fundamentally, people are still going to be buying the same number of things online, right? I mean, maybe not. They might not buy so much consulting. They might go to ChatGPT or whatever. But fundamentally, the same amount of money is being spent in the economy somewhere. So if you're the loser in this current environment, well, you've just got to think, okay, so how do I get the money clicks to my website? And that's still going to be the case. ChatGPT or Google AI overviews isn't going to replace someone needing to buy certification.
Yeah, super interesting, and I really like the framework that you laid out. And as I was talking to this investor, I was saying, like, obviously I'm not a financial advisor, but I was like, this is a cool opportunity, because if they know what they're doing, and obviously we know what they're doing, it's a massive, buy the decreased valuation, fix this, and you're back, you're back to where they were. So interesting. That's been an incredibly useful discussion. To summarize it again for the listener: concise answers, third-party content, data on your website, PR, and then potentially to make a custom GPT. Anything you would add on that, Tim, to listeners who want to surface on AI overviews and ChatGPT?
No, I don't think so. We publish a lot of stuff on our YouTube channel showing like case studies and all of that stuff. I think being aware of what these tools are saying about you is quite important. We do a lot of sentiment analysis stuff for our clients where we try and work out, I spoke earlier about, like, what are the messages that you communicate about your product or brand? And you can start by just figuring out, what do these tools know about you? Not what do they research about you? Like, what do they just default know about you? So if you're using ChatGPT and you're not it's not doing a web search, what does it think about you? What does it associate with you? What does it think of your reputation and the type of customers that you sell and the benefits of your product? Because once you understand that sort of the baseline sentiment that these tools and the baseline understanding they have, it's up to you to then create the content to fill in the gaps and maybe adjust some of those sentiments. So I think it's a test and see thing. And you've got to be dynamic. That's the other thing about all of these tools, is you run the same search twice, you might get completely different results because the answers are being generated. They're not just being served from a cache. So, you can be winning 1 second and losing the next second. So
and I wanted to sneak in DeepSeek, and we're going to sneak it in now because you're completely right. Like, you're going to, Perplexity's using GPT-4 as like this core model, or Llama, and then a new one comes out, and suddenly, bang, everything's changed. The model's completely different, and so you've got to be very dynamic. I agree. Like, it's well, if you've listened to 50 minutes of this, you're obviously you're one of the people who will be dynamic, and there's a lot of opportunity. So, Tim, where can listeners find you? What can you help them with, and where should they go to reach you or your team?
Yeah, the best place to go is just search for Exposure Ninja wherever you like to consume. So we're on YouTube. We post loads of stuff on YouTube, and lots of it about generative engine optimization. We've also got a podcast which talks a lot about GEO. So just search for Exposure Ninja anyway. If you want to come and find me on LinkedIn, I often talk about business growth and renewables or marketing or whatever. So just come and find me, Tim Cameron Kitchen, on YouTube. On LinkedIn. And hit me up if you've got any questions. I love talking about this stuff.
Great. Well, we'll link all of that. So Tim, thank you so much for coming on. It's been really good fun to have you and talk to someone else who's really excited about this stuff. It's a small community, but it's good to find a kindred spirit.
Absolutely. One day the world will listen to us, Max. One day.
Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.